You start the game off as Sam Green, a cop on the case of a missing baby, which, for some reason, brings you to the county's steel mill. Thankfully for you, Frank Stone is also there, and depending on how good you are at hitting QuickTime events, you either save the kid, or you don't. I should say that Stone just dies here. You then skip forwards to 2024, and play as this lady, Madison. Her mom just died, she's getting weird dreams, and has been invited by one Augustin Libert to the Gerent Mansion, where her problems will apparently be solved. You meet one Linda Castle on your way there, as well as one Bruno Stanford III. Turns out, all of you are here to meet Libert, and to sum it all up, you all have 1/3 of the tape for the film Murder Mill, which was directed by Linda as a teenager, which is said to have spooky properties that cause people watching it to become violent and homicidal. We then cut to the chase, to the 1980s, where young Linda is filming Murder Mill with her two friends, Chris and Jamie. They're trespassing on property, and in barges an older Sam Green who tells them to fuck off. Chris is pissed off at her movie being annoyingly delayed by Sam Green, but then it becomes intrigued when hearing about the legacy of Frank Stone. Some stuff that doesn't matter happens, and they sneak into the mill at night with the help of Sam Green's son to film on set. They film the finishing shots for Murder Mill, but Linda wants to shoot one extra scene in the furnace room, where Frank Stone, not the antagonist Hank Hill, Propane and Propane Accessories, where Frank Stone has had his soul burned into the very fabric of the building and yearns to be let free. The scene is shot, and everyone takes a break while some petty inviting is sprinkled in for token conflict. Chris, Jamie, and Robert go exploring on break and find Frank Stone's old nest, where undiscovered corpses of his victims are still rotting. Sorry. Robert, who is Sam Green's kid, freaks out and runs off to tell his dad. Jamie, for some reason, despite wanting to leave this whole time, is against the police being called to investigate the very real dead bodies, and Chris desecrates the dead by adding them to her student film. While this happens, the gang back in 2024 is still just exploring the mansion and looking for Libert. Anyway, Jamie and Chris get into a token argument, and just as they're about to come together, Frank Stone decides enough is enough and manifests himself as well as a door to a green portal that sucks in Chris. Jamie usually dies here unless you are following a guide on Game Rant to specifically save him, and it's not like he has much to do after this anyways. You skip back and forth between 1980s and the 2024 for this sequence, but it makes more sense for me to just explain it in sequence. Linda and the other girls are freaked out that Jamie is dead. Frank Stone starts to chase them around the mill trying to kill them. There's implied multiverse theory because things that happen in this 1980 explicitly don't match up with the reality in present day, but who cares? Robert gets his dad, and it feels like the devs run out of money here because we essentially skip the whole fight scene and get right to the part where we find Linda and the gang injured but still alive. Robert uses the magical camera that they have to contain Frank and its tape. The gang then splits the tapes in 3 and goes their separate ways. Presumably, no one questioned Jamie's death or the death of, the other girl who was there. In present day, Linda and the crew find Lieber's weird museum of Dead by Daylight IP, and Sam Green... I can't take that seriously. His weird museum of Dead by Daylight IP... and Sam Green barges in and punches Stan in the mouth. We would be angry about this, but Stan is a huge piece of shit. Sam tells Linda that the tapes are cursed, and Linda apparently suffers from early onset dementia or something because she doesn't remember the horrific events from 1980s and calls him crazy. Stan runs off, Madison chases after him, Madison loses track of Stan, but then finds the Horologium. I'm not even going to comment on the name. Chris climbs out of the portal in the middle and freaks out. We're given a choice to send her back into the portal immediately, and she basically just leaves the plot entirely if you choose this option, which I chose obviously because it's so funny. But if she doesn't, she just takes part in the chase scene later with no obvious difference. Stan finds Madison, and they make your way through the maze-like interior of the manor. Some talking happens and they're all angry at Lieber, and then she summons Frank Stone from the projector to kill them. Everyone books it, and depending on your choices, some or all of them die. Lieber then offers up Frank Stone to the entity, the godlike being from Dead by Daylight, before immediately getting killed by Frank Stone. The game ends with whoever is left and Frank walking through the woods before finding themselves before a bonfire. Liber is dead, but her voice lives on, and she narrates the fact that this universe is gone, and everyone is now forced to play Dead by Daylight for all eternity.
Whether killing or surviving, the entity will play with our souls for all eternity. An endless hunt of fear and hope, pain and sacrifice, from which even death is no escape.
Cue the server-ready sound from DBD, cut to credits. Wow, fantastic. First of all, Frank Stone, the guy in the title of the game itself, has about 5 minutes of screen time at the very beginning, dies 30 minutes in, and is not seen for another like 2 hours. Recording this now, I realize the guy has not even one spoken line. The entire game, he doesn't utter a single word.
Until I found him. Frank Stone. My key. My killer. I am Augustine Liber.
Liber isn't much better. She's literally introduced as the first character we see and is implied to be massively evil. And she's even just straight up there when Frank Stone dies. She doesn't become more nuanced. There's nothing that anybody in the plot can do to stop her, and then she just dies with no fanfare. All the characters are weak, so I'm not even going to... I'm just going to quickly dish out my grievances with all of them. Maddie's poorly categorized. It's implied very weakly that her mom is dead. There's not even a reason to care until it's realized that she's another character in the plot. She's in the mansion for reasons that aren't really explained except for like one line. And Chris is like the annoying mean girl, or like the director that's a little bit too up themselves, and she's like fine, except but I really don't like her because she desecrates the dead, and then it's just like, who cares, who'll know. And then Jamie is just the token guy who's there. Robert also just the token guy who's there. And Sam Green's whole arc is that he shoots Frank with a gun and then shoots him with a different kind of instrument. And then he just... I guess that's it. Oh my god. There's no fucking way. There's actually no fucking way. There's also a difficulty slider. And you might think, wait, this game has a difficulty slider? How? Why? How does that work? And the answer is that this game is lathered with DVD references and straight up DVD game mechanics. You get to repair the generators from Dead by Daylight, which some say is literally the most boring part of that game, and you get to do it without even the threat of failure, because the time is so generous. Only one generator in the whole game even has a time limit, and the other two you could just fail repeatedly, and the game just waits for you to be done. Like, I guess when you up the difficulty, Frank just equips unnerving presence or something, because it just makes them harder to hit, and that's it. And this is what really takes the cake. Throughout the game, you find memorabilia from Dead by Daylight, as well as literal action figures of existing killers in Dead by Daylight to collect. And the final shot after everything is done is literally just Frank Stone as a Funko Pop, which is just confusing. I don't know where this game is supposed to be on, like, the experience spectrum. Like, is it supposed to be a horror game? Because, it's like a slasher game, it's got the story's a slasher story, but then we are basically bombarded with memorabilia and IP for this other game that the developers are wink nodding at you to make sure that you know. When I pick up brand new parts to go fix the generators, I don't think, wow, this is I'm really immersed in this story that's happening. I'm thinking, wow, Dead by Daylight. And Dead by Daylight is not a video game that's like a serious thing. It is quite possibly the most unserious thing of all time. And so I cannot imagine what the direction was going into this. It baffles the mind. Okay, but in the end, the whole point of a video game is to experience. And the experience can be said to be the only thing you take away from a supermassive game. And in that, I congratulate them. They might not have achieved what they set out to do, but by God, this game kept itself in my mind for multiple days. I had to literally play through the entirety of Baldur's Gate 3 just to cleanse my palate. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. This video would have come out like a week ago, but I actually could not record it because I was so agitated. What were they thinking?